Today's video is inspired by a story. I very recently had someone approach me and tell me that someone had strongly suggested that she remove all her money from her bank accounts and hide it in her house. And she asked me what I thought about that. So I'm not sure if she just really wanted my opinion or she just figured I would maybe side with that kind of thing. I mean, I can tend to be a little bit distrustful and of things like banks. So maybe she thought I would think that's a good idea, but I told her I think that's a terrible idea. And basically, what I told her was the best thing you can do with money is spread it around. Okay? I'll get to this in a little more detail later. So I told her, I said, spread it around. So my first question was, well, my first comment was, I would not take all your money out and put it in your house. Okay? There's a couple of reasons for that. The first big reason that absolutely just shouts no to me is as security risk. She's somebody who's not wealthy, but she works hard, and she is self-sufficient, and she saves her money. And having that kind of money in your house makes you a target. And even if no one else knows and you're not specifically a target, you never know if you just might basically lose the lottery and have someone break in your house and then maybe you're wiped out, depending on how it's stored or where it's stored. Another thing I think about is fires. Money burns. If you put everything in there, bad move. The other problem is you're not really getting anything on there as far as returns or any interest or anything like that. So you're basically taking your money, putting it in your house where it makes you a bigger target than, we are randomly to be burgled or, lose everything in some type of a disaster. And then you're not going to get any benefit out of it. You're not going to get a return, no compound interest, no simple interest, no nothing. You're getting nothing on this money. And not only, actually, you know what I'm saying, you're getting nothing, that's partially wrong. You're getting a loss because if you look at the way inflation is, the CPI is supposedly like 3.5% right now as I speak. And I think we all have a feeling it's a bit higher than that. So you're actually losing money by keeping it in your house. Not a good idea. So the first thing I said to her was that I would not put the majority of my money in my house. So I asked her if she had how many banks that she had her money at, and she told me she had her money split up in 3 different banks. And I said, that's awesome. I said, because that's what I was going to suggest you do. Personally, I have my money in one bank, and then when I met my wife, she had her money in a totally different bank. And then once we got married, we picked a third bank to have our money in. So I have mine, she has hers, we have ours. Not only that, but my bank and her bank are both FDIC insured. Our bank is a credit union. It's NCUA insured. Now, some might say, well, you're tripling your chances of one of your banks having a financial issue. Well, yeah. And we're also tripling the chance that if there is an issue, we're not going to get wiped out because 2 of the 3 would be okay. I'll take those chances instead. So, like I said, first thing I said to her was, keep everything the way you have it. If you're happy with your 3 banks, keep them in the 3 separate banks. And if something were to happen, sometimes people seem to think that there's going to be some systemic collapse. Some people, I think, are just crazy or fools. Now, I am not a believer in that everything is okay with the economy by any stretch of the imagination. But if there's going to be a banking issue, none of us is going to know the extent of it. That's all going to be handled in the back rooms. If you have a problem like with Silicon Valley Bank and some of the other ones, they're going to address that as quickly as possible. Now, I've heard some people say that the FDIC doesn't really have the funds to cover a massive bank failure, and that's correct. But you know who can lend them the money? Congress. And you know where Congress will get it? They'll pass a bill, and then they'll just print more. So you'll get your money. Of course, it'll be devalued because they'll run the printing presses like crazy, but your typical person's not going to realize that. All they're going to know is, hey, I had 8 grand in the bank, and then it got locked away, but then they gave me my 8 grand back. Yeah. In order to do that, they ran the printing presses. They create a larger money supply. You had more dollars chasing the same amount of goods. Inflation rises, and that $8,000 might really be worth like 7,100. They just got ripped, but they don't realize that. So, if people are expecting some type of a systemic collapse, it's not going to happen. Not because they care about us, mind you. It's because they want to keep everything going to the benefit of themselves and their much, much wealthier friends. So my advice to her was keep your money in those banks, those same 3 banks. Don't put more than $250,000 in an account, because that's all FDIC insures you up to is $250,000, unless of course you're at Silicon Valley Bank, which they kind of bent the rules for certain people. They must have had friends in higher places than you and I. So I told her, make sure you keep it, preferably I would say substantially under $250,000 if you have those kind of funds. I don't, but if you do, keep it substantially under that. Spread it out to at least a few banks. The other thing I told her, and kind of the reason I have this here, is I said, keep some money in your house. Some money. Not a lot, not a ton, because again, like right in front of us right now, I think I have about $50 in $1 bills. Why $1 bills? Well, some people would say they have it, to plan for the apocalypse. But, sometimes there's a lot of things short of the apocalypse that you need to plan for. One example is telecommunication lines going down. Some of you may remember the CrowdStrike issue that occurred, I think it was about a month and a half ago, where a lot of computers just weren't working due to an error with an update in Microsoft systems. Now, that affected us at work. I would say by the end of the day, we were up and ready to go. Some places, from what I understand, they lasted multiple days. Now, let's say some type of an error, nothing malicious, but some type of an error occurred in the financial sector, and you can't access your money. You have money, you have it in the bank, okay? But you don't use cash anymore. You're always flashing your debit card, and you don't have cash. So you want to buy something. Well, you're going to need cash. So if you have a little cash in your house, excellent. You have a little cash in your car. I also think it's a good idea maybe keep, $20-$30 in your car. A good idea. But here's the problem. Let's say on the way home from work, you need a gallon of milk. The milk is $3. All you have are hundreds. What are you going to do? You're going to give them, they can't make change for you. Let's assume they cannot make change for you. They're not giving you the milk. That's not happening. Are you going to tell them you'll gladly pay them later for 1 gallon today? A la Wimpy from Popeye the Sailor Man? No, that's not going to work either. They're going to want money. Now, they will gladly, I'm sure, take your $100 bill, and you can buy, a bunch of stuff you really don't need, or you could just tell them to keep the change, but that's kind of stupid. You have your $1 bills, guess what? You can make complete change. Now, maybe it's $2.89, so you're leaving 11 cents on the table. Not a big deal. You got your milk, and you're with 11 cents. What does that really mean in the inflation-adjusted world we're living in today? So, like I said, lesson 1, spread the money out. Lesson 2, keep it under the insured minimums. Another thing is, if you can split it up so that some of them are, let's say, NCUA insured and some are FDIC insured, I think that's a good idea. Like I said, I would keep money in my house. Wouldn't keep a lot, because the more you have or people think you have is a security risk. I've said that, and I can't mention that enough, that if people think they have a reason to break in, they will break in. Now, one thing that I actually don't think is too bad an idea, and I know a lot of you are going to think I'm crazy, but a safe deposit box. Now, I know some people say, well, we can confiscate your safe deposit box. Okay, but really, what are the chances of that happening? At least it's secure money. Now, you might say, well, what if I can't access it? Well, that's true. There might be a chance you can't access it. That's actually a good point. But at least you have some money there. If you have two homes, maybe you can put some there. Do you have a trusted friend or relative, a really trusted friend or relative? Maybe you can leave something there. So there's options that you can spread this out. Another thing, precious metals. Some people, yeah, they don't like the idea of precious metals. I personally am a big fan of precious metals. I like gold. I like silver. I actually like smaller denominations. I like 90% silver. And also, not bad if you have 1 ounce coins. Because again, if you have 1 ounce coins, it says 1 ounce 999 silver. People know what they're getting. Okay, the spot price is $30, so this coin's worth about $30 or so. It's pretty easy. Dimes, quarters, half dollars, pretty recognizable. People know, well, lots of people know it's silver. I won't say all, but a lot of people know it's silver, and you can find out the fineness and value pretty easily. So that's another good way to save some wealth and some barterability. And I also think it's a good way to kind of have your money keep track. I mean, I think I'll repeat the story, but like I've seen people point out, 60 years ago, you could probably get a loaf of bread for 10 cents. Now you can't buy a loaf of bread for 10 cents, but guess what? Scrap value of a dime is about $2.10. You can get a cheap loaf of bread for $2.10. 60 years ago, you could buy a gallon of gas for 25 cents. Now you can't buy a gallon of gas for 25 cents. But guess what? Scrap value of a quarter right now, let's see, that's about maybe about $5.10, $5.20. So you can easily buy a gallon of gas with that silver quarter. That's pretty much held up with things. I like to look at silver kind of like keeping your cash in the bank in a high yield savings account or a CD. Now, some might disagree with me, but that's kind of the way I like to think of it, because I know obviously it can go down, but it can also go up. So I think the chances of an upswing and a downswing are pretty much equal in that regard. But I don't know. At some point, some of you might be thinking, why did I put this video on? But sometimes I had to make this video. I've been thinking about it for a while, because some people are just clueless. Like they actually think, like, okay, you can't put any of your money in the bank. Yes, you can put the money in the bank. And yes, I do actually believe it'll be protected, because again, they don't want to wreck the people who are benefiting the most from the system. Don't want to wreck that system. They're going to make it look as good as possible. So if you have money in the bank, you're not going to lose it. Just spread it around. That's all. If you have Bank of America and your wife has First Local Trust Bank, great, have it in First Local Trust Bank. Then maybe you can put it in someplace else. You're going to get a CD, put that in another bank. Just spread it out. Just like this money spread out on the table, spread your money out. Different banks. Make sure you have security at home for what you do have, because again, this is about keeping your money safe. Make sure you have cameras. Make sure you have methods of self-defense in your home. Make sure you have good lighting, because it is good to have some of it at home. I'm a fan of that, because you don't know what can happen. But like I says, my thing isn't like some type of systemic collapse. My thing is, we're so dependent on technology. Who's to say that there wouldn't be either a cyber attack from some terrorist group or a foreign nation, and all of a sudden now we can't use ATM machines for a week? Totally possible. Who's to say that our direct deposits won't go in the bank? I mean, there's a lot of things that could possibly go wrong. So I think it's best to be prepared for all those eventualities. So just a little food for thought, a little something for you to think of. Have a good one. I'll talk to you later.